Welcome to the Fireside Chat. For those who don't know me, my name is Joseph Weber, and I will be reading to you guys The Monkey's Paw by W. Jacob, published in 1902. Part 1. Without the night was cold and wet, but in the small parlor of a Burnham villa, the blinds were drawn, and the fire burned brightly. Father and son were at chess, the former who possessed ideas about the game involving radical changes, putting his king into such sharp and unnecessary peril that it even provoked comment from the white-haired old lady knitting placidly by the fire. "Hark at the wind," said Mr. White. "You have seen a fatal mistake after it was too late. It was amiably desirous of preventing his son, from seeing it. I am listening," said the lad, grimly surveying the board as he stretched out his hand. "Check." "I should hardly think he'd come tonight," said his father, with his hand poised over the board. "Mate," replied the son. "That's the worst of living so far out," bawled Mr. White, with sudden and unlooked for violence. "Of all the beastly, slush out of the way places to live in, this is the worst. Pathways a bog, and the roads a torrent. I don't know what people are thinking about. I suppose because only 2 houses on the road are let, they think it doesn't matter." "Never mind, dear," said his wife soothingly. "Perhaps you'll win the next one." Mr. White looked up sharply, just in time to intercept a knowing glance from his mother and son. The words died away on his lips, and he hid a guilty grin in his face and his thin gray beard. "There he is," said Herbert White, as the gate banged to loudly, and heavy footsteps came toward the door. The old man rose with hospitable haste, and opening the door, was heard condoling with the new arrival. The new arrival was also condoled with himself, so that Mrs. White said, "Tut, tut," and coughed gently as her husband entered the room, followed by a tall, burly man, beady of eye and rubicund of visage. "Sergeant Major Morris," he said. The sergeant major shook hands, and taking the proffered seat by the fire, watched intently. His host got out whiskey and tumbler, and stood a small copper kettle on the fire. At the third glass his eyes got brighter, and he began to talk. The little family circle regarded with eager interest the visitor from distant parts, as he squared his broad shoulders in the chair, and spoke of strange themes and doughty deeds, of wars and plagues, and strange people. "21 years of it," said Mr. White, nodding at his wife and son. "When he went away, he was a slip of a youth in the warehouse. Now look at him. You don't have to look. You don't look to have taken much harm," said his wife politely. "I like to go to India myself," said the young man, "just to look around a bit, you know." "Better where you are," said the sergeant major, shaking his hand. He put down the empty glass, and sighing softly, shook it again. "I should like to see those old temples of fakirs and jugglers," said the old man. "What was this? What was that you started telling me the other day about a monkey's paw or something more?" "Nothing," said the soldier hastily. "Leastways, nothing worrying. Hearing." "Monkey's paw?" said Mrs. White curiously. "Well, it's just a bit of what you call magic, perhaps," replied the major offhandedly. His three listeners leaned in forward eagerly. The visitor absent-mindedly put his empty glass to his lips, and then set it down again. His host filled it for him. "Look at it," said the sergeant major, fumbling in his pocket. "It's just an ordinary little paw, dried to a mummy." He took something out of his pocket and proffered it. Mrs. White drew back with a grimace, but her son, taking it, examined it curiously. "And what is there special about it?" inquired Mr. White, as he took it from his son, and, having examined it, placed it upon the table. "It had a spell put on by an old fakir," said the sergeant major, "a very holy man. He wanted to show that fate ruled people's lives, and that those who interfered with it did so to their sorrow. He put a spell on it so that 3 separate men got 3 wishes from it. His man was so impressive that his bearers were conscious. His light laughter jarred somewhat. "But why don't you have 3, sir?" said Herbert White cleverly. The soldier regarded him in the way that middle age is wont to regard presumptuous youth. "I have," he said quietly, his blotchy face white. "And did you really have 3 wishes granted?" asked Mrs. White. "I did," the sergeant major said, and his glass tapped against his strong teeth. "And has anybody else wished?" inquired the old lady. "The first man had 3 wishes, yes," was the reply. "I don't know what the first 2 were, but the third was for death. That's how I got the paw." His tone was so grave that a hush fell upon the group. "If you have your 3 wishes, it's no good to you now then," the old man laughed. "What do you keep it for?" The soldier shook his head. "Fancy, I suppose," he said slowly. "If you could have another 3 wishes," said the old man, eyeing him keenly, "could you have them?" "I don't know," said the other. "I don't know." He took the paw, and dangling it between the front finger and thumb, suddenly threw it upon the fire. White, with a slight cry, stooped down and snatched it off. "Better let it burn," said the soldier sullenly. "If you don't want it more," said the old man, "give it to me." "I won't," said the friend doggedly. "I threw it on the fire. Keep it, and don't blame me for what happened. Pitch it on the fire again, like a sensible man." The other shook his head and examined his new possession closely. "How do you do it?" he inquired. "Hold it up to your right hand. Wish aloud," said the sergeant. "But I warn you of the consequences." "Sounds like the Arabian Nights," said Mrs. White, as she rose and began to set the supper. "Don't you think you might wish for 4 pairs of hands for me?" Her husband drew the talisman from his pocket, and all 3 burst into laughter. The sergeant major, with a look of alarm on his face, caught him by the arm. "If you must wish," he said gruffly, "wish for something sensible." Mr. White dropped it back into his pocket, placing chairs, motioned his friend to the table. In the business of supper, the talisman was partly forgotten, and after the 3 sat listening in enthralled fashion to the second installment of the soldier's adventures in India. "The tale about the monkey paw is not more truthful than those you have been telling us," said Herbert, as the door closed behind their guest. "There's some time for him to catch the last train. We shan't make much out of it." "Did you give him anything for it, father?" inquired Mrs. White, regarding her husband closely. "A trifle," said he, coloring slightly. "He didn't want it, but I made him take it." He pressed me again to throw it away. "Likely," said Herbert, standing with horror. "Why, we're going to be rich and famous and happy. Wish to be an emperor, father. Begin, and then you can't be henpecked." He darted around the table, pursued by the maligned Miss White, armed with an antimacassar. Mr. White took the paw from his pocket and eyed it dubiously. "I don't know what to wish for, but that's back," he said slowly. "I got what I want." "If you only cleared the house, you'd be quite happy, wouldn't you?" said Herbert, with his hand on his shoulder. "Well, wish for £200. That'll just do it." Father, smiling shamefacedly at his own credulity, held up the talisman, and the son, with a sullen face somewhat marred by a wink at his mother, sat down at the piano, struck a few impressive chords. "I wish for £200, the old man distinctly. A fine crash of the piano greeted the words, interrupted by a shuddering cry from the old man. His wife and son ran toward him. "It moved!" he cried, with a glance of disgust at the object as it lay on the floor. "As I wished, it twisted my hands like a snake." "I don't see the money," said the son, as he picked it up and placed it on the table. "And I bet I never shall." "It must have been your fancy, father. said his wife, regarding him anxiously. He shook his head. Never mind, though. There's no harm done, but it gave me a shock all the same. They sat down by the fire, while the two men finished their pipe. Outside, the wind was higher than ever. The old man started nervously at the sound of a door banging upstairs. A silence, unusual and depressing, settled upon all three, which lasted until the old couple rose to retire for the night. I expect you'll find the cash tied up in a big bag in the middle of your bed, said Herbert. He made them bid good night. And something horrible squatting upon the top of the wardrobe, watching me, pocket your ill-gotten gain. He sat alone in the darkness, gazing at the dying fire, and seeing its faces in it. The last days were so horrible and so similar. He gazed amazed. It got so vivid that with a little uneasy laugh, he felt on the table for a glass containing a little water to throw over. And grasped the monkey's paw. With a little shiver, he wiped his hand on his coat and went up to bed. Part 2. In the brightness of the wintry sun next morning, as it steamed over the breakfast table, Herbert laughed at his fears. There was an air of prosaic wholesomeness about the room which it had lacked the previous night, and the dirty, shriveled little paw was pitched on the sideboard with a carelessness which betokened no great belief in its virtue. I suppose all soldiers are the same, said his wife. The idea of our listening to such nonsense. How could wishes be granted in these days? And if they could, how could £200 hurt you, father? Might drop on his head from the sky, said Herbert. Or said things happen so naturally, said his father, that you might, if you so wished, to attribute to the coincidence. Well, don't break into the money before I come back, said Herbert, as he rose from the table. I'm afraid it'll turn you into a mean, avaricious man, and we shall have to disown you. His mother laughed as, following him to the door, watched him down the road and returning to the breakfast table. Was very happy too, at the expense of her husband's credulity, all of which did not prevent her from stirring to the door the postman's knock, nor prevent her from referring somewhat shortly to the retired Sergeant Major's amphibious habits when she found the post brought a bill. Herbert will have some more money and some more funny remarks I expect when he comes home, she said, as they sat. I dare say, said Mr. White, pouring himself out some beer. But for all that, the thing moved in my hand. That I'll swear to. You thought it did, said the old lady student. I say it did, replied the other. There was no thought about it. I just... What's the matter? His wife made no reply. She was watching the mysterious movements of a man outside, who, peering from an undecided fashion at the house, appeared to be trying to make up his mind to enter. In mental connection with £200, she noticed the stranger was well dressed and wore a silk hat of glossy knee. 3 times he paused at the gate, and then walked on again. The 4th time he stood up, a hand upon it, and with sudden resolution flung it open, and walked up the path. Miss White, in the same moment, placed her hand behind her, and hurried, unfastening the strings of her apron, put that useful article of apparel beneath the cushion of her chair. She brought the stranger, who seemed ill at case, into the room. He gazed at her furtively, and listened in a preoccupied fashion as the old lady apologized for the appearance of the room and her husband's coat, a garment which she usually reserved for the garden. She then waited as patiently as her sex would permit for him to broach his business, but he was first strangely silent. I was asked to call, he said at last, and stooped and picked a piece of cotton from his trousers. I'm come from Maud Megan. The old lady started. Is anything the matter? She asked breathlessly. Has anything happened to Herbert? What is it? What is it? Gaston interposed. there, mother, he said hastily. Sit down and don't jump to conclusions. You've not brought bad news, I'm sure. Okay. And he eyed the other wistfully. I'm sorry, began the visitor. Is he hurt? Demanded the mother. The visitor bowed in assent. Badly hurt. Stay quiet. He is not in any pain. Oh, thank God, said the old woman, clasping her hands. Thank God for that. She broke off suddenly as a sinister meaning. The assurance dawned upon her, and she saw the awful confirmation of her fear on the other's averted face. She caught her breath, and turning to her slower-witted husband, laid her trembling, cold hand upon him. There was a long silence. He was caught in the machinery, said the visitor at length. Caught in the machinery? Repeated Mr. White, in a dazed fashion. Yes. He sat staring at her, blankly out of the window, taking his wife's hand between his own, pressed it as if he had been wont to do the old courting gift nearly 40 years before. There's only one left to us, he said, trying gently to look at her. It was hard. The other coughed, and rising, walking slowly to the window, the firm wished me to convey their sincere sympathy with you in your great loss, he said. Without looking round, I beg that you will understand I'm only their servant, and merely obey orders. There was no reply. The old woman's face was white, her eyes staring. Her breath was audible. On the husband's face was a look such as his friend, the sergeant, might have carried into his first action. I was to say that Ma and Megan's disclaim all responsibility. They admit no liability at all. But in consideration of your son's services, they wish to present you with a certain sum as compensation. Mr. White dropped his wife's hands, and rising to his feet, gazed with a look of horror at his visitor. His dry lips shaped the words. How much? £200, said he. Unconscious of his wife's shriek, the old man smiled faintly, and put his hands on the like a slightless man, dropped a senseless heap to the floor. Part 3. In the huge new cemetery, some 2 miles distant, the old people buried their dead, and came back to the house, steeped in shadow and sun. It was all over so quickly that at first they could hardly realize it, and remained in a state of expectation as though of something else to happen, something else which was to lighten this love, too heavy for old hearts to bear. But the days passed, and expectation gave place to resignation, the hopeless resignation of the old. Sometimes it's called effort. Sometimes they hardly exchanged a word, for now they had nothing to talk about, and their days were long to weary. It was about a week after that the old man, waking suddenly in the night, stretched out his hand, and found himself alone. The room was in darkness, and the sound of subdued weeping came from the window. He raised himself in bed. Come back, he said. You'll be cold. It is colder for my son, said the old woman, and wept afresh. The sound of her sobs died away on his ears. The bed was warm, and his eyes heavy with sleep. He dozed fitfully, then slept until a sudden wild cry from his wife awoke him with a start. The paw, she cried. The monkey's paw. He started up in alarm. Where? Where is it? What's the matter? She came stumbling across the room toward him. I want it, she said quietly. You've not destroyed it. It's in the parlor on the bracket, he replied. Why? She cried and laughed together, bending over, kissed his cheek. I only just thought of it, she said hysterically. Why didn't I think of it before? Why didn't you think of it? Think what? He questioned. The other 2 wishes, she demanded rapidly. She replied rapidly. We've only had one. Is that not enough? He demanded fiercely. No, she cried triumphantly. We'll have one more. Go down and get it quickly, and wish for a boy alive again. The man sat up in bed and flung the bedclothes with his quaking limbs. Good God, you are mad, he cried aghast. Get it, she panted. Get it quickly, and wish. Oh, my boy, my boy. Her husband struck a match and lit a candle. Get back to bed, he said unsteadily. You don't know what you're saying. We have the first wish granted, said the old woman feverishly. Why not the second? A coincidence, stammered the old man. Go and get it and wish, cried the old woman, quivering with excitement. The old man turned and regarded her, and his voice shook. He has been dead 10 days, and besides, he would not tell you else, but I could only recognize him by his clothing. If he was too terrible for you to see then, how now? Bring him back, cried the old woman, and dragged him toward the door. Do you think I fear the child I have nursed? He went down in the darkness, and felt his way to the parlor, and then to the mantel. The talisman was in its place, and a horrible fear that the unspoken wish might bring his mutilated son before a mirror, he could escape the room and seized upon him, caught his breath as he found that he had lost the direction of the door. His brow cold with sweat, he felt his way round the table, and groped along the wall until he found himself in a small passage with the unwholesome thing in his hand. Even his wife's face seemed changed as he entered the room. It was white and expectant, and to his fears seemed to have an unnatural look upon it. He was afraid of him. Wish, she cried in a strong voice. It is foolish and wicked, he faltered. Wish, repeated his wife. He raised his hand. I wish my son alive again. The talisman fell to the floor, and he regarded it fearfully. Then he sank trembling into a chair. The old woman, with burning eyes, walked to the window and raised the blind. He sat until he was chilled in the cold, glancing occasionally at the figure of the old woman, peering through the window. The candle end, which is burnt below the rim of the china candlestick, was throwing pulsating shadows on the ceiling, walls until a flicker larger than the rest expired. The old man, with unspeakable sense of relief at the failure of the talisman, crept back to his bed. And a minute or two afterward, the old woman came silently and apathetically to his side. Neither spoke, but both lay silently, listening to the ticking of the clock. A stair creaked, and a squeaking mouse scurried noisily through the wall. The darkness was oppressive, and after lying for some time, screwing up his courage, Elsie took the box of matches and striking one, went downstairs for the candle. At the foot of the stairs the match went out. He paused to strike another. At the same moment a knock, so quietly and stealthily as to be scarcely audible, sounded on the front door. The matches fell from his hand. He stood motionless, his breath suspended until the knock was repeated. Then he turned and fled swiftly back to his room, and closed the door behind him. A third knock sounded through the house. What's that? Cried the old woman, starting up. A rat, said the old man, shaking himself. A rat. They passed me on the stairs. His wife sat up in bed, listening. A loud knock resounded through the house. It's Herbert, she screamed. It's Herbert! She ran to the door, but her husband was before her. By catching her by the arm, he held her tightly. What are you going to do? He whispered hoarsely. It's my boy! It's Herbert! She cried, shrugging mechanically. I forgot it was 2 miles away. What are you holding me for? Let go! I must open the door! For God's sake, don't let it in, cried the old man, trembling. You're afraid of your own son, she cried, struggling. Let me go! I'm coming, Herbert! I'm coming! There was another knock, and another. The old woman, with a sudden wrench, broke free and ran from the room. Her husband followed to the landing and called after her appealingly as she hurried downstairs. Heard the chain rattle back at the bottom bolt drawn slowly and stiffly from the socket. And the old woman's voice, strained and panting. The bolt, she cried loudly. Come down, I can't reach it. But her husband was on his hands, knees groping wildly on the floor and searched the hawk to find it before the thing outside got in. A perfect fusillade of knocks reverberated through the house. He heard the scraping of a chair. His wife put it down in the passage against the door. He heard the creaking of the bolt as it came slowly back. At the same moment, he found the monkey's paw and frankly breathed his third and last wish. The knocking ceased suddenly, although the echoes of it were still in the house. He heard the chair drawn back, the door opened. Cold wind brushed up the staircase. A long, loud wail of disappointment and misery from his wife gave him courage to run down to her side, and then to the gate beyond. The street lamp flickered. Opposite shone a quiet, deserted road.